Now, I do think the Kershaw Cryo is a pretty cool new offering from Rick Hinderer and Kershaw, but what I'm really excited about is what's coming up next. And I'm not just talking about the Cryo 2. I'm talking about the extended partnership between Rick Hinderer and Kershaw. And yes, that's pretty much what I'm predicting. Hello my friends, Late Boy Scout here with my review of the Rick Hinderer designed Kershaw Cryo, now in black. Isn't that nice looking? You're probably used to seeing this one right here, the carbonitride titanium coated version. This is the original version of the Cryo, the first one that was released. If I'm not mistaken, they are also releasing a Cryo 2, which is going to be a larger version of this, and they'll probably start with this color again. They've also got, I believe this is out right now, and I don't have it, unfortunately, but they've got a bead-blasted stainless steel version of it out. This is the Kershaw Chive, just an example for color alone. But you can see that there is a big difference between the carbonitride titanium version and the stainless steel bead-blasted version. They're different colors. This one's coated, this one's not coated. So, you know, it all depends on what you like, which one you'd rather have. But now you've got a variety of Rick Hinderer designed cryos, and that's pretty cool. So this is the one you're all used to seeing, so we'll set it aside for now and focus on the black one, which actually has been my testing bed for this review. I've done a fair amount of cutting with this knife. Enough to get a good feel for it, understand, you know, where it starts out in quality as far as sharpness is concerned, get a feel for the ergonomics, cutting different materials, and really sort of get to know the knife a little bit and see how it holds up. We started off, of course, by checking to see how sharp it was. It was razor sharp out of the box. Could cut hair right off my arm. Did fine on paper tests, of course. Put it up against a little paracord, and it went to town and did just fine. And cut through lots of paracord nicely and easily. Lots of cardboard as well. Tore through all that without any real complaints as far as comfort or ergonomics or edge retention. Then, of course, we went to a little bit of wood, a little pine wood, and did a little carving and kind of hard cutting with that stuff just to see how it dug into it and to see how it felt in hand doing all that. No real complaints. It is a folding knife, so it's not going to be as comfortable as a nice fixed blade and something with a big fat rounded handle. But for some of those tasks that are more common to EDC and somewhat less common but still pretty reasonable, it did just fine. And I expect that it's going to be a perfectly fine EDC knife for just about anybody who wants a nice EDC knife. I guess we'll leave it at that. Of course, ACR13 MOV steel, which is what we get with this blade, is not the best for edge retention, and after all those tests, it was not sharp enough to cut hair anymore. But I was able to bring it back to a razor sharp edge again without much difficulty on my Spyderco Sharp Maker. ACR13 MOV steel, although it does dull, also comes right back very easily. So let's talk a little bit about the construction of this knife. It is a frame lock blade. It is all steel construction. It does have that lock bar stabilizer right there. Keeps you from pushing the frame lock out any further than you want to. Only to there is as far as it'll allow you to push it. Very smart design, and really neat to have that on such an inexpensive blade. It is a flipper. It is also one that can be deployed via thumb stud. Either way works fine. I think the flipper is a little bit nicer on the thumb. Of course, you don't use the thumb at all for the flipper, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's a little bit nicer ergonomically, in my opinion. And while we have it in that deployed state, we can talk about the jimping, which is pretty good. Pretty sharp. On the blade, at least, it's pretty sharp. On the spine of the handle, of the frame, it's a little rounded, but it still locks my thumb in pretty well for any kind of push cuts. By the way, I did do a little bit of that with some drilling in some wood, and I found that tip held up just fine. No problems whatsoever. It's still nice and sharp, no damage to it. Really good job drilling. It does have some slight play in it right now, front to back and side to side, The front to back goes away if you sort of readjust that, but the side to side may still be there a little bit. I didn't mention that there's some jimping down here on the actual handle on the frame, which does help with retention in hand a little bit. I could take or leave it really, but it does pretty nice. As you can tell, you've got a nice big hole for your lanyard. I like to keep my lanyards pretty minimal when I do put them on knives. Just a small little bit of paracord with a couple knots in it, just enough to get my fingers on and pull the knife out of my pocket. Then of course we got that 4-way repositionable deep carry pocket clip from Kershaw. Thank you, Kershaw, for bringing that out, putting that on some of your knives. That is really cool, and one of the neatest features on some of your newer knives. I do prefer this particular knife tip up. That's not the case for every knife that I own, but we carry very deeply when we go tip up. We carry even more deeply when we go tip down. Pretty much buries 100%. But I like being able to pull this out with the lanyard and then sort of get that right on the flipper, you know, pull it out just like that. It's a very nice deployment method for this particular knife. It is full flow-through construction, meaning that all your dust, dirt, blood, whatever you happen to have is going to be blowing straight through there, is going to clean straight through there. You can wash that out, you can blow that out. No real need probably ever to disassemble this knife since you can clean it out so easily. It is of course Chinese made. It's one thing we get with most of the 8CR13 MOV steels, steel blades from Kershaw. And so it's no real big surprise that we have a little finish issues that I could probably point out to you. One of them is that this edge right here is actually quite sharp. Not finished looking at all. I'd prefer that to be a little bit ground down and kind of rounded. But you're not really going to get that with an inexpensive Chinese Kershaw like this one. So just kind of expect to, you know, as you have this in hand and whatever you're doing, be able to feel that kind of sharp edge right there. I don't know that it's all that noticeable for most cutting chores, but you might encounter that and notice that from time to time, and it might kind of bug you. Something to just kind of pay attention to. Well, let's take a moment to compare the Hinderer-designed Kershaw Cryo against a few other knives in the same sort of size range and sort of philosophy for EDC use. Let's go ahead and set that one down there, and we'll compare that to, starting with, how about the Benchmade Mini Griptilian? Certainly a more expensive knife and higher quality, I would say. Design, well, I don't know. They're pretty close in design as far as just the design quality is concerned, but the execution of the Griptilian is much better than the Cryo. We could also talk about this one right here, another Benchmade. This is the Mini Barrage. I've had this one for a little while, and it's also some great construction and great design. Very close in size to either one of those, and certainly more expensive. Both of these are considerably more expensive than this one. You could get about 2 or 3 Cryos for what you'd pay for this one, or maybe that one as well. How about the Kershaw Skyline, a very popular knife. That one from Kershaw, as I mentioned. Really close in size, really close in the same sort of, you know, EDC philosophy. The same size-wise, same, you know, quality-wise as well. Here's one from Buck. There's the Mini Vantage. They don't really call it the Mini Vantage, just the Vantage Small. It's a great little EDC knife. Pretty inexpensive, extremely lightweight. Same quality steel, I'd say, as 8CR13 MOV. That's the 420HC steel. Not bad, not great either, but definitely sort of in the same size range there. Then here's one, the Kershaw Leak. That's a little bit larger than the Cryo, and I think that's probably as far as we're going to go for comparisons today. A lot of good knives out there in that size range. I'd say that the Cryo does pretty well against these, especially for a budget folder. You can get less expensive budget folders with the same quality, I would say, though. The Cryo in the $35 or so range, I think, $33 range, something like that. You can get a few that are very close in build and quality and steel, of course, for around that price and less. So just kind of bear that in mind. And I do want to take a second to point out the difference in finish between the Cryo and the Kershaw Leak, which is more of a DLC coated, if I'm not mistaken, knife here. The Kershaw Cryo is not DLC. I'm not sure what they call this coating, but it's not that same sort of coating that the Leak is using, that sort of matte black finish that's very, very nice looking and very cool and holds up pretty well. But this one, through the cutting I've done, has held up just fine. There's been no chips in the blade, in the that is to say, in the finish on the blade. No real wear at all, except for you can see a little bit of shine there. So some of the some of the texture, some of the finish of that black finish is starting to sort of smooth out and wear away. But I think it's going to hold up for quite a while. So I have to say that the black version of the Kershaw Cryo, if you decide you want to get this one, but you're a little concerned about that finish and how it's going to hold up, I'd have to say it's going to hold up pretty well, and that's really not going to be a concern for you. Now, I do think the Kershaw Cryo is a pretty cool new offering from Rick Hinderer and Kershaw, but what I'm really excited about is what's coming up next. And I'm not just talking about the Cryo 2. I'm talking about the extended partnership between Rick Hinderer and Kershaw, and yes, that's pretty much what I'm predicting. I expect that we're going to see a wide variety of designs from Rick Hinderer coming out from Kershaw, not unlike the wide variety of designs that we saw from Ken Onion through Kershaw. And if I'm right about this, boy oh boy, things are about to get really fun in the knife world. Looking forward to all the new designs that Kershaw and Rick Hinderer are planning on putting out. And the Cryo, as the first of those, is not a bad offering at all. I'm the Late Boy Scout. Thanks very much for watching this review. I'll see you on the next one.